Ken James and Jason McKittrick, brought to you by Cryptocurium.
Good evening, folks, and welcome to another edition of Learning Lovecraft. I'm your host, Jason McKittrick, and joining me, as always, is the traveler of the Eldritch Path, Mr. Ken James.
Oh, hey, guys.
And this evening, we're going to be covering the street. Ken, Lovecraft was a bit of a snob.
Hey, look, man. My first interjection here is anyone that is reading it or about to read it, just picture the episode of Always Sunny in Philadelphia, The Gang Breaks the Liberty Bell. H.P. Lovecraft is on the side of Colonel Cricket.
Yeah.
And he's Dennis in the episode. And any of us, red-blooded Americans, we're all, we're all D, Frank, and Charlie in this episode. And yeah, so before Jay breaks everything down, I just gotta say, F you, Howard.
Well, okay, and that's a fair assessment, and I also like the lens for which we should view this through the, Always Sunny.
Before he goes in, the only reason I'm saying this is because it's disparaged to us and where we came from.
Sure, it does, and we will get to that.
Yeah.
And like I said, yes, Lovecraft was a bit of a snob, and not even just a bit, he was. But I think the thing to take away from this, and as we dig into this, he had a deep love for New England and the traditions held therein.
Sure.
And that's where this all springs from. So before we jump into it, written in late 1919, and this was actually published in the December 1920 issue of, once again, the Wolverine Amateur Journal. And so Howard starts us off with this passage, which I think is important.
There be those who say that things and places have souls, and there be those who say they have not. I dare not say myself, but I will tell of the street.
All right, Ken, so this story traces the history of this street, right? This New England city. And according to some sources, it's supposed to be a street in Boston.
Yeah.
Boston. And it gets creamed, so it's kind of funny.
Yeah.
Terrible joke.
It's okay.
It is.
I mean, you're a dad of three.
I do it all day long.
You're more than welcome to be able to do those kind of things.
So we have another passage coming because his own words kind of build this here. So,
men of strength and honor fashioned that street. Good, valiant men of our blood, who had come from the blessed isles across the sea. At first it was but a path trodden by bearers of water from the woodland spring to the cluster of houses by the beach. Then, as more men came to the growing cluster of houses and looked about for places to dwell, they built cabins along the north side, cabins of stout oaken logs with masonry on the side toward the forest. For many Indians lurked there with fire, arrows, and in a few years more, men built cabins on the south side of the street.
All right, so right there, we're given, that's the settling of it, right? It's the men come.
He's basically like, this is my block, in more modern terms.
Yep.
This is my block, and I die for this. This is my hood. You're on my strip. We're talking about my strip. I'm setting up, my block, talking about, me and the boys, we've been out here. We've been doing the thing.
Right.
You come by my block, you know what's up already.
Wow, strong words.
This is where I get this point.
Yes. But he puts it forth in this way, and almost like a storybook fashion, right? It's like, when the white men came from the Blessed Isle, and as soon as you get the Blessed Isle thing, you may or may not know, but you probably know after reading this, Lovecraft was an Anglophile. Mm-hmm. He loved England, and he was also kind of like annoyed that we rebelled.
Yeah.
Which is like,
it's heir apparent in this story.
Yeah. And it will continue.
And once again, this is why this story drew so much of my ire. Uh-huh. Like, whereas like certain concepts you can understand, like I said, this is my block, this is repping it. In the same breath, it's like, yo, bro, like,
And yes, but I think it's important because you have to put yourself in HP's shoes a little bit. Because yes, he has these misguided ideas. Yes, he's, these are our shores. It's like, nobody. We took this land from other people. But I think he couldn't get away from this idea in his head where, like, oh, this was this, these mythical beginnings. We came to these shores. We brought societies to these savages.
It's funny.
He had
It's
this
like
whole...
no one took him to the side and was like, hey, Christopher Columbus thought these were the Indies until the day he died.
Yeah.
Right. Actual history, nobody.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No,
Sorry, guys.
no, it's fine. He would have hated him anyway because he was Italian.
Right, true. As the story goes on to tell.
Yeah, we'll get to that. So there's the beginning of it, right? Very simple beginnings. And then we get the Puritans. And here's another passage because we're going to need... Because I like the language he uses in here. He builds it up in a very, like I said, a mythical way. It's like, this storybook beginning to this shining city, right?
Up and down the street walked grave men in conical hats, who most of the time carried muskets or fowling pieces. And there were also the bonneted wives and sober children. In the evening, these men with their wives and children would sit about gigantic hearths and read and speak. Very simple were the things of which they read and spoke, yet things which gave them courage and goodness and helped them by day to subdue the forest until the fields, and the children would listen and learn of the laws and deeds of old, and of that dear England which they had never seen or could not remember.
Is he trying to make the Puritans out to be like good guys?
Yeah. Well, that's
the people
the
Salem witch trial guys.
Yeah. So he's saying like the sober children. At that point, he means they're not like they don't have sugar or whatever they did at the time. They're not amped up. Yeah. They're just obeying and following their parents.
Children are to be seen and not heard, kind of thing.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. You know what would happen if they weren't sober children? They got the shit beat out of them. Shout out to
amongst
Sharon
other things.
No, I'm just kidding. No, but the thing is, it's like, first of all, too. Let's get something clear here, HP. Your block ain't that lit, dog.
I mean,
you don't have block parties. Like what he's describing is boring. He's like, I want my boring street to remain boring, and I want everyone to be like London. Oh, London,
Yeah, I mean, yes. I mean, he's very much aggrandizing this whole the English way and the way that English did. I mean,
yeah, shitty food.
It's, once again, I'm trying to be devil's advocate for him a little bit, but at the same time, it's like, here we are again, where all right, this is this story of the street, and we're gonna have stories that come along later where he very much condemns the Puritans and their way, and the way this whole religious, just overly just oppressive kind of situation there, but in here, he's like, no, they helped, bring about this, the solidifying the foundations of this whole society.
Now, do you think, though, that was by design? Do you think at this point he's playing some kind of character? Or do you think it's just straight up how he feels?
Well, I think,
because that could be a turn. You know what I mean? Like,
no, he could have had a turn. Yes, absolutely. Right now, this is 1921. He could feel this way, and like, I'll get to the end in the conclusion, and we'll discuss some things about what kind of brought this about. Because when things happen, in your country and outsiders come in, everyone kind of comes together. We saw it in 9/11, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Where these outsiders, nobody knew anything about them. It's just we were being attacked, and everyone kind of like pulled together. And during
the
this,
CIA.
Don't start. Everyone kind of pulled together, that kind of thing. But during Lovecraft's time, when this was happening, there were some terrorist things that were going on. There was an influx. Right. I'll get to it later. There's an influx of Russian immigrants after the October Revolution. We'll get to it. But I think this is Lovecraft, and probably the last time I'll try to say it, is him giving this storybook beginning to this New England town, which is his ideal in his mind.
Sure.
Right?
Because he's boring.
There, in many ways, you could say he was.
Yeah.
But then in other ways, not. So it's like, it's so crazy.
I'm just, as you being the devil advocate for him, I'm being the complete opposition.
I like it.
At this point.
I like it.
It has to be this way for this.
Always Sunny.
Yep.
Someone has a powdered wig on right now.
Yep.
And it's HP.
How much will you give us for this pumpkin here?
Exactly. So right after, and this is ridiculous, he gives them one sentence. He goes, "There was war, and thereafter no more Indians troubled the street." It's like, Jesus Christ,
Yeah.
dude.
Yeah.
Even then, and I don't know how, we'll get to this because this is going to be a long journey for us, but at this point in his life, Indians were just, they were a nuisance. We brought
Yeah.
them culture, and you know what? They got in our way.
And he was calling them Indians.
Yes. Well, it was,
Yeah,
yes.
but that concept still is just insane to me.
Well, yeah.
The hive mind
Sure.
of people with some that just, they're Indians. No, it wasn't India.
No, but it doesn't matter because they had given them their label.
Exactly.
Yep. And
That's what I'm saying. This is my whole problem with just gen population.
yes.
It's
Yeah.
true.
Normies.
Normie. No, they're just people.
Sure.
People, they hear something, they latch onto it and they go with it. And no matter how many times you're like, this isn't India, or
Right.
whatever the case may be.
It didn't matter to them. This was when
Still
we
doesn't
got to
matter.
these shores, and it was like, and I don't mean we, God.
Yeah.
When the English and the Dutch and a lot of others got to these shores, it was like, well, look at this place and look at this woefully underdeveloped society that we can just
Yeah.
pave over.
And they're like, there's no spices here?
Right.
We came for the spices. There's no spices.
No, wasn't gold either, which is crazy up here. So, as the city grows up around the street, he tells you about the trees and how it's built. These simple, beautiful houses of brick and wood, and they all have these rose gardens. It's a gorgeous, harmonious place, and this is kind of this is the ideal for Lovecraft. These New England cities. Have you been up to New England?
No. Oh, actually, no. I was in Boston. Yeah, I've been to Boston.
You will make a trip to Providence soon, I think. And it'll put a lot of these things kind of, you'll be like, I see what he means now.
Yeah.
These big overgrown trees, these brick buildings, these New England kind of like, in his mind, that was society peaked in like 1760. Like, really. And that's what he felt.
Well, I sold an electronic drum set to go to Boston to have the money to go.
Oh, okay.
And it was actually the 3 days I spent there.
Yeah.
Fucking awesome.
Okay. Boston, probably a little bit. Sure. Okay. We'll move on.
Oh, it was near Harvard. It was
Okay.
in the nice area. There was
Okay.
Yeah,
Alright.
it was. Joe Pierce let us stay with him for 3 nights. It was awesome.
Thanks, Joe.
Thanks, Joe.
So I just wanted to touch on this because this is. We'll reach back to this in other stories, but this ideal of this New England city that is like in his mind the peak of civilization, probably like I said, 1760s.
Yeah.
This is going to come back to us in the Dream Quest of Unknown Kadath. We're going to get to there soon. This is important for the whole Lovecraftian lexicon. He has this idea that where is this place that I just it's the Providence, it's the New England of Lovecraft's childhood that he yearns to go back to before everything went terrible for him.
So, see, hearing that, I can look at the story in a little different light, where
Yeah.
it's setting up almost like a home base for this one section of the canvassing story, right? So, like, just going in to read this as a novice, like I have my ideas my ideas of just how he's telling the story, and it comes off like. I don't want to say bigoted, but it comes off in a way of just like, all right, you don't like America, we get it. But
Yeah, he doesn't like what's happening to him.
right, but still in the same breath, he's also talking about everyone lovingly referring to, England as being the place, and everyone that's in America at that time is like, yes, England rocks, and it's like, so, but you saying that, I get that this is kind of a vibe that he puts in places now. So, okay, I understand that a little bit more.
Look at it this way, whereas if you were to he kind of treats New England and this idealized version of New England as, say, someone who would treat like ancient Greece. It was this like ancient, to him, almost ancient civilization where it was like they really figured it out then.
Yes.
And then all these foreigners started coming in. And to him, this English civilization that was brought here was like, that was it. That was the peak of civilization. There were gentlemen. There were these things. The way that they did things, it was the way, and it was how it should have been. And Where he arrived at that, there's a lot of speculation where you can figure that. I mean, he's, just where he lived, his family lineages, like we discussed in the previous episode. He arrives at this idea that this is it. This is it. And anything that attacks this is just no good.
All these foreigners come, they're taking their helmets off, and they're like,
right.
Like, you're no American.
Right, right. You got to watch out for them.
Yeah.
So I think it was just important. I just wanted to point that out there because this is very important to him. This is going to come up in other stories.
Right.
He has this shining. This is his Camelot, basically.
Yeah, right.
This New England of this period is his Camelot.
Yeah.
So just that's a thing to keep in mind going forward. So then we come to the American Revolution. All right, and he gives us this fun passage where it's like he tells us that the street, the street it dreamed on past wars, calamities, and changes. The men go away, then some didn't come back from war, and then that they furled the old flag and put up a new banner of stripes and stars.
And this is where my blood started to boil when I was reading it.
Well, he doesn't get too bad on this because it's like he even says later on that like there's
it doesn't take much for me.
I know. No, he doesn't really give much criticism though because he's like they may have been a little different, but like he says here that men talked of great changes, but the street felt them not. For its folk were still the same, speaking of the old familiar things in the old familiar accents. Like they're still speaking English.
Yeah.
Like he's like, yeah, we had a revolution, but we're still English. Is basically what he's saying. And the trees still sheltered these singing birds, and every evening the moon and stars looked down upon dewy blossoms in the walled rose gardens. Yeah. He's like, yeah, there were big changes, but the spirit was still the same. He's like, okay, I can deal with the American Revolution, but things to come I can't deal with.
Right. Well, that's the thing too, because they even said, we're still going to have dealings with this country, so we shouldn't commit war crimes. England, or
sure,
Great Britain said when they were fighting with we're still going to be in business with this country after this war. So
what was it in The Patriot? He's like, these. We will reestablish commerce with them. Same kind of thing.
Yeah, dude, come on. And also, The Patriot kicks ass. I'm sorry.
So historically accurate.
Hey, man. I don't care at that point.
Yeah.
That movie rocks.
So, then we move on a little bit further, and we start to move into the Industrial Revolution. And I like how he describes this. And we're still in this like fairy tale way of description, where he's like, new sounds came from the distance, and then the strange puffings and streaks from a river a mile away. And he's talking about, like the beginning of like the industrialization. There's factories. But he says about these people that okay, the air wasn't so pure as before, right? But the spirit of the place still hadn't changed. These were still, he even says the blood and soul of the people were as the blood and soul of their ancestors who had fashioned the street. So these are like a couple generations removed, but they're still the same type of American. But he doesn't let them be American, which is the thing that bugs me. Right. It's like, no, these are not Englishmen, dude. Stop.
Yeah. And well, the funny thing, too, is like the strange sounds. I almost like thought of it as like different music. Like,
okay.
I was thinking of like, like the Italians and the Irish. Like, you hear like, the like all that kind of stuff. And like the of the Italians. And he's like, oh, God, these blasted immigrants in there.
Okay.
Fervent singing.
I read it as industrialization. Like he hears these puffs of smoke.
The first part I meant. With the strange sounds.
Sure,
the rest, I thought it was all like
encompassed
with that moving in.
Hey, it works. He hates both.
Yeah.
And it's funny. He wants to he's like, oh no, like in his mind as he's writing this, you can tell that he's somewhat of like, no, these were good people. This was the heart and soul of America, but he doesn't want to call them Americans.
Yeah.
Like he doesn't call them that at all in here.
Yeah.
Which is the thing. It's like, no, these are descendants from Englishmen. It's like, dude, at this point we were not Englishmen. Like we had made the point. Like, no.
Yeah. And I love that. We made the point. No.
Yeah.
We did a lot of point making.
We did a lot of point making. I mean, at this point, let's see. I guess we would be past the War of 1812 too. So it's like doubled down at this. So we get to this other, and I like the way that HP lays this down. The way that he states this, that the spirit still didn't change even after they tore open the earth to lay down strange pipes, or when they set up tall posts bearing weird wires. I like that. I mean, I like the way that he he lays that out where it's like what he's talking about, but like he describes it as an outsider. Like
so it's basically they're the strange pipes being plumbing and things like that, and the wires. So at this point, you're not self-sufficient anymore. At this point, it's a communal thing that everyone has to be part of this grid, and as you see going forward, this keeps happening. This becomes a thing. So, God, I am starting to side with them a little bit here.
Well, here's the thing, though. This is a society that the American society evolved. And it's like, yes, these are these beginnings that you hold very dear to yourself, and that's fine. But we evolved a lot. Like, even up to this point, we're talking Industrial Revolution. It's like, we are not those people anymore.
The funniest thing is that you can picture him just like a guy that for like 2 weeks they have his front like street walk like dug up, and he's just like, I have to go to work, or like I'm trying to go to the market, and like they just have the street open.
I can't write with all this ruckus.
And like there's just like the streets open, and they're putting in pipes, and they're all like, we got fucking pipes going in, man. And he's like, confine your lousy pipes, like he's so upset, because I get that too. It's like,
catch this chamber pot,
right out the window. And then he's like, and then they finish that, right, and then they come with the like the phone lines and everything, and he's like, first the streets open, now poles with wires, like he's like so upset because it's one thing after the other.
And you know what?
I get it.
You know what? Your animated part here, I think it makes a lot of sense, because I think he was just as upset, like writing about this. Like, and then they did this.
Yeah, exactly.
He breaks the tip of his quill pen,
and he stops for a second, and he's like, he calms down, and then he goes, he fixes it, grabs another one. Right back to angrily writing.
Goes right through the paper. Okay, so but still, the ancient lore in that street, there was so much of it that the past could not easily be forgotten. Okay, but then came the days of evil. The first influx of immigrants.
The days of evil.
That's what he calls it.
I know. I remember reading it and being like, yo, dude, chill.
So now we're past the Industrial Revolution, and it's run its course, and the area degenerates into this rundown and polluted slum, essentially, right? And all the street's old houses are like falling into disrepair. No one cares anymore, okay? No one cares anymore, all right? So this is after. So now we're after World War I, and like I mentioned earlier, the October Revolution, which was basically the beginning of the spread of communism, and this was headed by Vladimir Lenin. I'm not going into it now; it's a whole big thing. But this is what had just happened in the world. Okay, this is after World War I. This is when he's writing.
Yeah, if you spread the communism, I'll punch you in your face. You know what I'm saying?
Easy.
I'm sorry.
The area becomes home to a community of these Russian immigrants. Okay, he's not into it.
No, he's fed up.
From the frozen land, I believe he calls it. Among the new residents is the leadership of this like vast band of terrorists, and they want to plot the destruction of the United States on Independence Day. You almost turned into Bill Pullman.
Yeah. I saw that movie in theaters.
Here we go.
I'm sorry. Hey, this is what we do here. I saw that movie that summer. I swear to God, 8 times.
Okay.
Because there was nothing like it. It was so good.
Yeah.
And I had Bill Pullman's speech as the president memorized. The last time I saw it in the theater, I stood up and I recited it with him.
Wow.
9-year-old Ken James.
Did you peak at 9?
Probably.
That's all right. So did Howard. No, I'm kidding. Sorry, folks. Sorry. So they're planning this thing. We can't, it flies in the face of everything American. And even this point when he's writing this part, I think even Lovecraft is like, yeah, they can't do that on Independence Day. And he's like, wait, I am American. He's like, no, but I love England. Like even he's conflicted on paper.
He's fighting with his own shit.
So the day arrives. The terrorists are all gathered to do their thing. It's about to pop off. The police are confused. They've been like going in and out of houses. They're trying to figure out the whole thing. They can't figure out who may be involved because there's just all these people. They don't know what's going to happen. And the tension's building, kind of. And the street, all of a sudden, just all the houses collapse and kill all of these terrorists. Yeah.
You fight fire with fire, Jay.
Okay. So I want to before we discuss all this, I want to lead this with this passage here.
A poet and a traveler who came with the mighty crowd that sought the scene tell odd stories. The poet says that all through the hours before dawn he beheld sordid ruins, but indistinctly in the glare of the arc lights. That there loomed above the wreckage another picture wherein he could descry moonlight and fair houses and elms and oaks and maples of dignity. And the traveler declares that instead of the place's wonted stench there lingered a delicate fragrance as of roses in full bloom. But are not the dreams of poets and the tales of travelers notoriously false? There be those who say that things and places have souls, and there be those who say they have not. I dare not say myself, but I have told you of the street.
Why in this story does he talk like a pirate? There be those. Like, even in the opening passage, he does it.
I don't know if that's specifically pirate.
But it seems piratey.
Maybe because just pirate talk is from the 18th century, and that's what we're doing here.
Okay.
I don't. You asked the question. I'm giving you my best answer.
Sure. I should know better.
Sure. So these things collapse, and then we have one of these poety fellows, and he sees like a vision of above the ruins. Oh, there it was in its original state, almost like the things collapsed, and the spirit of the street was like released, and like, oh look, that's what it used to be, and it sacrificed itself to destroy these terrorists, so the street could live on in another form.
I literally think that passage is like celebrating everyone's dead.
Yeah.
And they're gone, and that's the spirit. The spirit is just like, oh, there it is. They're not here anymore.
Yeah. This is very silly. That's the whole story. That's the end.
Yeah. No, it's
He's suggesting that a tradition can be so perfect and great that even if a century later things came, or more than a century, things come to threaten it, that it can, with this strong culture and the spirit about it, it could use its essence to destroy those things. It's a very silly story.
Yeah,
and
no, I read this as just like it's not a love letter, it's a hate letter.
Yeah, oh yeah, for sure.
This is a total hate letter to the Revolutionary War.
Okay.
It's a total hate letter to change.
Yeah.
And progress. But when you do things of like, checks and balances and weighing things out, it's like, when does the change become too much change? When does it, So I get the point of his of like, this used to be the pinnacle.
Yeah.
But you still have to have leeway. So you have to have leeway, but you also have to have restraint. So there's gotta be the
give and take.
The give and take, right? So he's talking at a point of where it's like, whoa.
Yeah.
They took a mile, bro. Like he's like, how dare they? And it's like, did you do anything though?
Yeah.
Like he's writing it at the point of like an observer, as opposed to someone who was like, not jumping in.
Yes, I agree, and I also think that it's interesting that he never comes to the point where he realizes it's not. He's like, how could this, like, we had this perfect society? It's like, if he just looked or maybe he even knew this, but if he just looked a little harder, he'd realize clearly English society didn't work because the vast majority of the people living here, the colonists, were like, yeah, this doesn't work anymore, pal. We're not answering to a king 3,000 miles away.
Yeah.
This doesn't work anymore. We love the beginnings of it. This brought us this far. Now we need to bring it the rest of the way by making these changes.
Yeah.
And for him not to see that, or at least accept that, is the silly thing about this.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, man, back in the storybook ages of when this happened in the beginnings, everyone romanticizes the beginning of America. It's like that, that time. I mean, look how they do in any of the movies or anything. Yes, get it. But just to focus on the English stuff, it's like they had, that was the end. They got to their pinnacle. They had reached these shores. They had started these colonies, but it only went so far, and it didn't work out so well. So we evolved, and it's funny that he doesn't either see it or accept it.
Yeah, and my problem too with this story is just how people can interpret it.
Yeah,
because like I read it, I know I'm a well-versed person. Dude, I got my hand in everything, and I'm always reading everything. But like,
just stay away from those gorillas, okay?
Can't promise anything, but look, man, like, people will take this. You know, some people will take this as like a manifesto of purism and this and that. But then other people will take this and make it a manifesto of like change matters. Like, there's both sides. They'll read it and they'll be like, they'll have these. It all depends on the person, I guess. Yeah. And they'll have these like revolutionary ideas of either. See, this is why things need to be the same, and then other people be like, "This is why things need to change." Yeah. It's the same coin, just different faces. Yeah. And I'm sitting here as like like I consider myself, rock, flag, and eagle, Charlie. I consider myself, I'm an American. Like I'm one of those dudes. Yeah. I'm one of those dudes. I'm a dude, bro, when it comes to that kind of thing. But like this story, like, it kind of came for that. It came at that, like, there was, taxation, yes. Yeah. Like that kind of thing, like, and I'm like, whoa, without representation? What's up? But sure. I know I'm sounding silly, just rambling on, but like, when I was reading it, like, I was like, it literally lit that fire in me, and I texted you, and I was just like, dude, fuck, what is this guy, bro? Like, I'm like,
And I agree with you to an extent, but I think it doesn't get to the manifesto heights because it's just not written very well.
Right.
It's so obvious what he was trying to put here. It's like, I'll show you to change stuff. Yeah. It's like, dude, stop.
Yeah, but in the same breath, people. Yeah. People read
the English were immigrants. Yeah. Like, how does he not, like, how could he, like, that's the thing that gets me. Yeah. Like, he has a lot of, like, he's a big conundrum. He really is. And this is one of the ones that gets me. It's like, you see this stuff, and you can look at this stuff and like, oh, but these immigrants coming in. And it's like, dude, the English were immigrants. What are you talking about? How do you think? Why don't we rewrite this story? Why don't we take the story, but then also give the 500 years before when the Native Americans here? What do you think they view us as? Yeah. And I say us just as Europeans, as ancestors and that. Yeah. But it's like, how could you be that like short-sighted and like not see the perspective of that? And it's just that's why this story to me is so silly. It's just it never. It's like what. So there's no spirit of the place that existed that when the Native Americans were living there.
He's talking about a different spirit of place that has come way later. Yeah. But I'll put it in this light. The late great Norm Macdonald said, he said, "Isn't it convenient that the good guys always won?" Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah. The victors get to write the history.
Exactly. Yeah. So I mean. Hey man, like, he was in a I don't want to say it. He was in a place of privilege. I don't want to say that. I hate that privilege shit. He was, but like, it's just like a.
Here's the thing: we're 1920. There's some things that are going to happen to Lovecraft in the next decade, in this next coming decade, that are going to change him, and the change, at least to a small degree, and it'll change as time goes on. You'll see it on the page. Right now, this is some younger Lovecraft saying some pretty silly shit.
Right.
All right, so, in conclusion on some of this stuff, there's definitely some historical background on this that Lovecraft had spoken about where this story had come from, right? And specifically, which is kind of crazy, there was the Boston police strike of September through October of 1919. Kind of interesting. And he said this specifically when writing to his good friend Frank Belknap Long, which we will talk about later in some later stories. Very important guy in the weird fiction.
I love it when like every episode you're always like, oh, and then there's this, and I just like I do the dumb smile and nod. And like,
hey, we're getting to it, man.
Yeah,
We're getting to it.
know.
We're getting to it. So Lovecraft said in the letter, he said, "The Boston police mutiny of last year is what prompted that attempt. The magnitude and significance of such an act appalled me. Last fall, it was grimly impressive to see Boston without bluecoats," meaning police, and to watch the musket-bearing state guardsmen patrolling the streets as though military occupation were in force. They went in pairs, determined-looking and khaki-clad, as if symbols of the strife that lies ahead in civilization's struggle with the monster of unrest and Bolshevism. So this was, he was very much like, okay, after World War I, now we have this Russian Revolution that just occurred. We have an influx of these Russian immigrants, and then like there's no police. Like it was an interesting time for him, and there were these terroristic threats that were occurring as well. So it was very much of the time, and he was, as you can, and I think we all can, but you specifically right now because we're talking about it, you can definitely sympathize with. He got very, hey, this is mine. Like, what are you guys doing? This is my,
It's the block, baby.
Yeah,
it's my street.
Yeah, so
he was a stoop kid.
Yeah, and he was very anti-immigration, which I can understand on his level that it's like, yes, you love this you love this thing that you love, but
he became a Karen. He Karen.
Yes, exactly. He became a Karen about this kind of stuff. Yeah. He was the Karen on the street. He was and that's basically what happened for him. And it's he's leaving out other salient points that would help him possibly understand this stuff better, and just kind of just took the whole ownership thing and just no, that's wrong. No, they had it right. And it's unfortunate that at this point in his life that he just didn't realize that kind of stuff.
It took kind of a day to sink in, but like I think maybe I like to think maybe that, like I was saying early on, that maybe this is just kind of a character building thing that he's writing, like, because in his own life, did he fight and do anything for anything? No, he just wrote, right? He just
there was no
observed
military service. He
not even military. Like, was he like active in anything? You're right.
No, he was just he very much viewed himself as a gentleman from the 18th century, which is a century before, and 2 centuries before, excuse me. And I think he was, he viewed himself more as a poet and a dreamer and this kind of thing, like we've discussed before. I think he fell in love with ideals and these versions of things that were very much storybook. I know I keep going back to that, but that's what it sounds to me. It's like this castle on the hill, this shining city on the hill. This is what he falls in love with, and it's a shame because there was a bigger perspective that he could have owned and could have seen more, and ultimately we could have had richer texts here that could have, and this was clearly, a younger man's reaction to this thing.
But hindsight is 20/20 also. Like, we don't know, and he didn't know, obviously. He was just going, if this isn't part of a story or part of something that he's trying to tell, it's just, like you said, a young man emotionally writing.
Reacting.
But in a very concise and well-spoken way. As much as, like, okay, it's not the greatest of his writing. It's not a horror story. It's not anything. When this came across my desk to read, I was just like, what the fuck is this? Like, I was like, I read it and I was like, okay. Oh, what, you don't like revolutionary? It's just like, and I didn't really get like that, but in reality, I was just like, I didn't need to read this at all.
It's very true. This is a very pointless story, to bring in another quote about someone else's idea about this story. Mr. S.T. Joshi, who we often mention, quote, probably the single worst tale Lovecraft ever wrote. And it's true, because it's not even a tale. It's just I'm angry about this thing, like we mentioned. I've taken ownership over this thing that I don't have ownership over.
Yeah.
And it's a young man being very emotional about something, and he put it to paper. And, because he was a writer, we're basically seeing him grow up on paper.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I mean, far be it from me to criticize one of the greatest literary minds that ever existed. But in reality, it's like...
Yeah.
Dude, you're literally just, writing about what happened. And not in a way... isn't this supposed to be fiction, right? This is supposed
It's thinly veiled. It's allegory.
Okay, so it's allegory. But in the same breath, it's okay.
Yeah.
Okay, dude. You dropped one.
Yeah.
You dropped one here, buddy.
Yeah.
All right, anyone could do what you just did there. The wording was well worded. And it was he sneaked in and out of the English language at points. But in reality, bro, you're looking out a window. You just wrote about looking out a window.
Basically. Yeah, and that's why it has no
right, because there was no point where there was no point where he's like, I went to the local council and submitted my ideas. That wasn't written down. It was just a man, a do nothing, a wet blanket.
Yeah,
it was a wet blanket looking out a window, talking about his discontent about what's happening.
Yeah,
unwilling.
Yeah.
To do anything to make any changes.
Right. Yeah, you're right.
So
you're right.
in the end,
yep.
That's why I was like, here's a gif of D spitting in Colonel Crockett's face.
Yeah.
And Charlie spitting in his face. Because that's the thing, it's like, I can't stand that. I can't stand the lackadaisical criticism of change.
Yeah.
Without any kind of move, without any kind of a lot of times stillness is the move.
Yeah.
But when you're complaining this much, this isn't the time.
Yeah.
So if he had this much disdain for immigration, the Industrial Revolution, all this stuff happening, get out of your fucking room, dude.
Yeah. Oh no, that's the thing. Him being so shuttered, and he had a period of seclusion where he developed a lot of these ideas during that period of seclusion.
Sure.
And just to speak from once again we're speaking about ancestors, so it's whatever. But you and I both come from the same kind of background, Irish Italian background. Without immigrant populations, our country would not be what it is. I mean, I know this is, preaching to the choir. Everybody knows this. We've heard this forever. But, it's funny to see this stance because most people never take this stance. It's a very strange stance that, it was perfected in 1760 or whatever, 1740, and everything after was no, this is no good. It was better back then. And it's just it would have been interesting to see, because he didn't live to World War II, for him to see how well we did. Yeah, we suffered a lot of losses, but how well we did and beyond from World War II. It's because of all the immigrant populations that we were able to survive that war.
Yeah, but not just that, go back to World War I.
Yeah.
He should have seen...
Yeah.
You know the ones, all quiet on the Western Front?
Yeah.
You know the ones that were running the relays?
Yeah.
It was the Irish and the Italian kids from New York, Philadelphia, Boston.
Mm-hmm.
Those were the ones that were doing the biggest fighting. Yeah. And in World War II, same thing.
Yeah.
Kids that were descendants of immigrants in the streets fighting for this country.
Yeah.
You know why? Not because it was the obligation. It was because they actually believed in something.
Right.
Of the American dream, quote unquote.
Yeah, no, and this is all very red, white, and blue. And we love to talk about it. And it's funny because he gets cut off because Lovecraft dies in 1937. He gets cut off before he gets to see wow, that's, and I don't want to turn this into the American History podcast, but that's where we really came into our own.
A third.
Yeah, sure.
We just get drunk and talk about American history.
We just stand on a hill with a flag.
And we just yell. That's the whole podcast. Yeah.
No. But this is I think this is why even the most subdued of American can look at this and be like, yeah, this is ridiculous.
Yeah.
Clearly this didn't work.
Yeah.
You're trying to just put square pegs in round holes here to make this seem and it's just silly. So my final thoughts on this story are, I can certainly sympathize with his love of tradition and the concept of home, but his immovable stance on outside ideas and people being essentially poisonous were extremely short-sighted.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Yeah. And yeah, my final thing, it's so frustrating because you still encounter these people today. Mm-hmm. The people that are complaining and crying from the window.
Yeah. Oh, sure. Yeah. Armchair quarterbacks.
Yeah. And it's just like, look, man, you wrote this cute little story about your disdain.
Yeah.
But in the long run, you were wrong.
Yep.
You did nothing.
Yeah.
And stick to writing. Not complaining.
Well, it's what it is, and also it also reveals that other side of, American society. Everyone gets their voice.
Yeah.
And hey,
sure.
Without it, we wouldn't be as great as we were.
Exactly. And that needs to keep up.
Oh, 100%.
He should be able to do that. Yeah. But I'm able to also go, shut the anyway, no, it was just one of those. This is one of those stories that
and you can see, because if you're passionate about stuff and if you're if you feel that you're you take pride in your country, of course you're going to read something like this and be like, what the f- is this guy talking about? Where's the tentacles?
Yeah, right.
It's just I could see you coming to this and be like, what is this?
But, that's why I texted you. I was just like,
it's a shrug my shoulders kind of story. But now that you can see this from the thing, it's like
I thought I was reading a horror story.
It is a horror story.
For him.
For him.
Yeah. They're everywhere.
They're serving this new dish called spaghetti.
Yeah,
I don't know what it is. And there's these balls of meat on top. It's like, dude, relax. It's delicious.
Scrabble. It's Scrabble. Yeah.
Stuff's great, but it's like lead.
Yeah,
boom.
boom. Yeah.
All right. So with that, any other closing statements, sir?
No, this is
yeah.
S. Joshi. He knows what he's talking about.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the man knows.
The Josh man.
Yeah.
And one day I hope he knows that I call him that. He was absolutely right. This was the dumbest thing to write.
Yeah.
And for me,
published. This got published.
Exactly. And here's my closing statement about it. Here's what's great about this country.
Go for it.
I have the ability to say the greatest horror writer in the history of the world wrote this dumb shit story. And I could say, H.P. Lovecraft, way to drop the ball.
Well, it's what it is.
It is what it is. But I get to say it, and that's me. That's me. I just, just want to say that.
It's fine. And you know what? I don't have any notes on it, but he was very... very critical of his own writing, and towards the end of his life, you would have brought him this. Hey, what do you think about this story? He probably like, ugh, that's me as a young guy.
He would have done the Chaz from Airheads and wiped his own ass.
It's possible. It's, I mean,
it is. Yeah, I just, I'm glad we talked about it because I had some things to work out.
As you always do.
Yeah. It's me.
This is all these episodes, just so you know, folks. These are all therapy sessions for Ken.
No. That's our other podcast. This is me.
No, these are too.
This is me learning H.P. Lovecraft.
Yeah.
With the best tour guide that I could imagine. And,
trying.
Yeah, but also, I'm working them out.
Yeah.
It's not me at home just like stomping around. Brett's like, what's up? And I'm like, do you know what H.P. Lovecraft said about America?
I don't like what he said.
I don't like it. I don't like it. No, it's not that. But I just, it's fun. It's fun to be able to, criticize one of the greatest ever to do it, and but in a fun way, you know,
in a fun way, with all due respect to, and thank you folks for sticking with us. These last two stories that we covered, were the tone dictates what we're going to be talking about here, and this is one of the things that just behind the microphone kind of thing. It's hard to know what kind of tone to bring to some of these stories because I know the great mythos stories are coming up, and we have these stories that are like foundational, they're important. And it's like, I want to go through all the stories, and we are. And I just want to, I have to bring something to these stories where it's like, let's make it conversational. Let's talk about it. And some of these stories just aren't very interesting. This is this example so far. This one, The Street, is the most uninteresting we've done so far. But we found a way, and we got to an area where it's like, hey, this is going to figure later, and this is why this is important. But it's still a terrible story.
And also in piggybacking off of that, so it's Jay's doing his damnedest to make this interesting, and once again, this is why I am here, because I am the layman. I am the guy, the wild card. Yes, exactly. I am the guy that's just like, what did this guy just say? Like I am bringing that to it, and some people may not like it, some people might love it, but this is us. This is me and Jay discussing this kind of work, and honestly, the numbers. People are digging it, and I'm digging it that you guys are digging it.
Yeah, thanks to the folks who've reached out and have been giving some kind words. Folks who've emailed us. I really appreciate it. I appreciate the kind words. This is a work in progress. I mean, Ken is learning, but I'm also learning at the same time because, I have immense respect for the man's work. Clearly, if you know what I do for a living, you know how much I respect his work. So this is a fun project that we're going through, and we're having a good time. So I appreciate all the kind words, everybody. So one last question to you, Ken. Did you think any story like this existed in this book? No,
I that's what I was saying. Like when you were like, you told me that you to read. For, Jay gives me homework. So, and he does his own. We have, and that's the thing. I want to also thank you. Jay does so much work for this podcast with his notes, and he's going to be humble here, but. He really does do a lot of work, and I do all the audio stuff. But he does so much work to make this possible. But piggybacking off of all that work, no, I didn't think this was ever good. Yeah, I was like I told you, I was reading it, and I was like, yo, what's up with your boy? I wanted to say that. I wanted to be like,
no, absolutely,
straight up Northeast Philly of this guy. What's up with your boy, dude?
But this is important. It's funny because now I realize just how important this story kind of is to inform you, because then going forward, you're like, because without this story, you're like, what's his deal with New England? Like, you see it in these stories, man. The guy is in love with New England,
right? And you know what the thing is too, though. Like, I could have gathered that.
You could, but
without this weird love letter.
Yeah, but this is specific.
This is fucked up. I'm sorry. This story is fucked up.
How would that be? That'd be great to find the Wikipedia page. Ken James said about this story. This is fucked.
This is fucked up. In a weird way. You know what I mean? Like,
it is.
Like, because I don't mean in the way of people out there doing like crazy weird horror movies and shit, like Ryan or whatever. I mean, like literary.
Don't call him up on this.
Sure, but literary. What I'm just saying, literary.
Yeah.
This is fucked up.
Oh no, it is.
It is. It's weird.
Well, I'm going to save all these themes for when we get to our coverage of the story The Outsider. That's when he moves into his Poe period.
Sure. I'm down for that.
This man is an outsider.
Yeah.
In the time that he lived, H.P. Lovecraft was an outsider, and he viewed himself as such. So every one of his stories that comes out, even though people were like, oh my God, this is amazing, it's amazing because it was so different from everything else that was going on. It was taken from, centuries before almost.
Yeah.
And this is a bad example, but this is a good example at the same time of a story being just not like, what, dude, what?
Yeah. Well,
sometimes they hit their mark, sometimes they don't. This one didn't hit the mark.
I was recently asked by one of our most what's the best word to use? One of our loyal listeners from our other podcasts, and they said, "What happens when with learning Lovecraft? What happens when you're done with all the stories?"
Okay.
And I said, "We'll find material."
Okay. Well, chart it out. If we do just the stories, this will last almost 5 years.
Exactly. So, but in the same breath, I was just like,
he don't even know about the Patreon yet. That's coming.
Exactly. People don't know. We got irons in the fire.
All right. Do you want a little idea what we're going to be doing to pad some of these stories out? We're going to be doing some Lovecraftian film reviews. We're going to talk about other Lovecraftian things that we want to talk about. We're going to talk about hopefully next summer. Hopefully, we're going to have a Providence trip coming up because Necronomicon happens, and Ken will get to see Providence for the first time, having read at that point some of the good mythos stories.
Yeah, and I'll be like, fucking Providence.
You will not.
No,
You'll be
I know,
like,
I know.
oh my
I know,
God,
I know.
now I get it.
Yeah, no, this is it's different. This journey, and we're man, episode 15, and this does require. I do want to say this now. It does require. It's not just us talking about other things. This requires a sense of using my analytical brain. Yeah. Which, oh God, man, I love doing this conversations and having with Jay, and Jay knows he's he's a hero of mine, who I get. It's funny, but I get to be best friends with one of my heroes, and doing this with him, I think is it's a big honor. And for anyone out there that's jumping on board with us here, I want to say this is one of the cooler things I've done in my life, and we got a lot coming. So any of these questions of what happens when it's done or what, we don't plan on it being done.
We're far out from anywhere near being done. We're right in the beginning. Any of the folks that are asking this, I mean, all you have to do is look ahead at all his stories in chronological order. We've got a ways to go. Yeah. And some of these stories are going to take over a month to cover.
Yeah, we'll have multiple episodes on stories.
Wait till we get to when we get to some of the big stories that are longer and really do require extra time to record on and deserve that kind of coverage. There's going to be 4 or 5 part episodes on stories. Yeah, when we get to the I dream about when we get to At the Mountains of Madness. It's going to be amazing.
I know you do, because you're always like, you bring it in the middle of episodes, you're like, oh, and you're gonna see this, and you point at me and tell me this, and I'm just like, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about, dude.
Well, I'm just letting you know.
I know, it's funny,
but now there's a record, and people will know,
exactly,
and you'll know. Like,
that's the funny dynamic.
I just want to point all these things out, because when I do point those out, because I'm like, hey, this is coming up, so when I can point back later, like, hey, remember in the when we were making fun of the street, and we said it's like this is what I was talking about.
Absolutely. So yeah. Last thing, just this is super fun, and it's getting me back to reading and giving me some patience in my crazy busy life.
Well, I'm glad that it's a little still spot for you.
Absolutely.
I'm very excited to go forward. We got some great ones coming up, and I can't wait to get to them. And it's good to see that we can turn some of these stories into a conversation that's at least the conversation is interesting. So so I guess that's it for the street. We've come to the end of the street, Ken. So for this episode of Learning Lovecraft, I've been Jason McKittrick,
and I've been Ken James,
and we'll see you beyond the wall of sleep.